Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very interesting talk today here at Lumen on the connection between our metabolism and our menstrual cycle. So, as women, during our menstrual cycle, we experience fluctuations in our hormones. And those fluctuations can really impact our metabolism, can really impact how we are utilizing fuel for energy, how we tap into our fat stores when needed, how we're using our carbohydrates when they are available. So we're going to discuss today those fluctuations, what to expect during each week of our menstrual cycle. But the good news is we can actually do a lot about our nutrition. We can cycle sync our nutrition during each phase to really optimize our health and our happiness throughout our cycle. There are some foods that hold very powerful properties that can really boost our metabolism throughout this interesting time, from week one throughout ovulation and then the premenstrual phase. So here to discuss these foods and how to cycle sync our nutrition is Dr. William Lee. Welcome, Dr. Lee.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on.
So Dr. Lee is the author of an incredible book called Eat to Beat Your Diet. It is really fascinating. I highly recommend everyone read it. There he describes how metabolism and certain foods can help you beat fat and still stay energized. And in that book, Dr. Lee, you mentioned that metabolism is like the engine in our body, right? Now, for the listeners that haven't bought your book and don't really understand, what we mean by metabolism being the engine, what do we mean here, and why is metabolism so important?
Right. Well, metabolism is really the process that's hardwired inside our body to give us energy throughout our entire lives. We are born and created with the ability to be able to extract energy from the food that we eat, to use it in particular ways, to store it when we are not eating, and also then to be able to draw from those stores, which happen to be in our fat, in order to be able to run our lives. And so, although we don't think about metabolism on a minute to minute level any more than we think about the fuel in our car and how that fuel drives the engine of our car, we're just sitting in the car driving away until we need to actually get more fuel. Similarly, in our metabolism works invisibly to be able to power us so we can go from point A to point B throughout our day and throughout our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, at Lumen, we really appreciate that metabolism is the driver behind reaching all our other health goals. And I think for women, because we're going through all these fluctuations in our hormones compared to men, from, having the menstrual cycle to perimenopause and beyond, it's, I think, really important to focus on doing everything we can to strengthen and improve our metabolism and like you said, like have a body that's really efficient at burning carbohydrates and fats. Now, we'll start with, basically week one. Okay, I think we'll go through week 1 to 4 and really highlight the important foods that we can incorporate during each week. So with week one, this is the week we're bleeding, we've got our period. And with this loss of blood, we see a lot of women, suffer from fatigue, from, loss of iron. And, deficiency in iron can be very problematic. I mean, it can lead to severe fatigue and exhaustion. So it's a supplement that we really need to focus on here in week one. So with like iron-rich foods, are there some really amazing foods that we can incorporate that can help us replenish our iron levels?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, as we go through our lives, especially as women go through their menstrual cycle, the choices that they make in terms of what they eat can help to fill up those micronutrients that life actually takes from us. For example, like iron during bleeding. So some iron-rich foods that you can eat include leafy greens, like spinach is well known being a source of iron, but legumes are also really great. Lentils are an example, and other beans, dried fruits, apples, pears, prunes. There's a whole variety of dried fruits that one can actually eat. So it's not just a single food to choose, but a variety of foods that all can contain iron. Now, the reason that this is also important is that many of the foods that I just mentioned, the spinach, the lentils, the apples, also can help to increase and elevate your metabolism by giving you more energy. And studies have actually shown, both in the lab as well as in human studies, that these types of foods not only replenish your iron, but actually help to burn body fat in ways that do give you more energy and elevate your metabolism.
Wow, wow, that's interesting. So with iron, we know that vitamin C
Mm.
helps iron absorption in the body, and I think a lot of people don't realize that actually that it's a good combo, right? To have those iron-rich foods, but then our body needs to be efficiently absorbing that iron. So what sort of vitamin C in rich foods can we incorporate in week one here to really
Sure.
help
When
out?
when when one thinks of vitamin C, you think about orange juice, for
Yes.
example. But orange juice, actually, the juice itself has a lot of sugar, and sugar
Yeah.
can actually have this contrarian event of actually making you feel more sluggish. And so, I have a better idea, which is if you want vitamin C, you can actually just eat an orange, as an example, rather than drink a cup of juice, which will actually is made about eight oranges it takes to make a juice. But when you actually eat the actual citrus, you get all not only the vitamin C, but you also get dietary fiber, which helps gut health, which lowers inflammation, and also helps to burn body fat and make your insulin work more efficiently, so that you actually have more energy. Same thing, apples and pears, also good sources of vitamin C. Red bell peppers, broccoli, also good sources of vitamin C. Watermelon to a degree as well, and Brussels sprouts, the other kind of brassica vegetable, bok choy, also a great source of vitamin C. The theme that I want to emphasize is diversity. We're not stuck to one food. We can choose among many based on our personal preferences and what's available to us.
Yeah, good point. So okay, so that's great. So we've covered week one, where our hormones are at their lowest. But now we're going into week two. We're actually seeing our hormones increasing, especially estrogen. And with estrogen, it holds a lot of benefits. So with increasing estrogen, we see our bodies becoming increasingly insulin sensitive, which is great because now our bodies are becoming more efficient at burning fat, more efficient at utilizing those carbohydrates. So to help out with those hormones and the increasing hormone level, healthy fats are so important. That's why low-fat diets are problematic when it comes to our hormones as females, because cholesterol is the precursor to our hormones. We need healthy fat to build these hormones. So I feel like in week two, this is a great opportunity to really look at our fat intake and incorporate like healthy fats. We're all for here at Lumen, the Mediterranean diet, healthy fats like avocados, olive oil. What sort of healthy fats have you, studied and researched and have really seen, have a massive impact on, metabolism on a whole?
Well, I'm so glad that you actually mentioned this idea of being fat as healthy and cholesterol, in fact, being healthy. Our brain is filled with cholesterol, and that's actually important for the function. So the fats that we actually eat can be either beneficial or harmful fats, and actually any fat in excess is probably deleterious. But when we're going to eat fats, and cooking is really really helped by having fats. How do we choose the best fats for our body that can actually be useful, for example, in this second phase during the menstrual cycle? So I think about olive oil as a monounsaturated fatty acid, which contains also, if it's extra virgin olive oil, contains little bits of the actual olive it's rich with polyphenols. So not only are you getting the healthy fat, you're also getting a huge amount of polyphenols like hydroxytyrosol and other substances that can actually boost your metabolism by burning down harmful internal fat that is excess in nature. So ironically, you're eating a healthy fat like olive oil that has substances that actually burn down harmful internal fat.
Wow.
Now, there's plant-based omega-3s, which are really healthy as well. So plant-based foods are generally the healthiest way to go. You don't have to be a vegan, you don't have to be a vegetarian, but we all should really stack on plant-based foods and find the most delicious way to eat them. So you already mentioned avocado. Avocado has alpha-linoleic acid, which is the precursor to omega-3s. It's Mother Nature's plant-based omega-3s. Our body converts it into the omega-3s that you might associate with seafood, for example. Cacao also has omega-3s
Wow,
as well. And
that's surprising for a lot of
yeah,
people, right? You wouldn't expect cacao to have omega-3.
well, it's alpha-linoleic acid. It's the precursor. It's the plant form. And so your body will convert that. Now, eggs also have some omega-3s, although not as much as seafood. And again, the best quality eggs you can get, organic, free-range eggs would be much preferable. How can you tell that egg is high quality? When you crack it open and the yolk looks like a blood moon, rich, deep orange. That's when you know the egg is in the highest quality because it's filled with carotenoids, these natural bioactives. Now, obviously, what I haven't mentioned, but I've saved for last, is healthy omega-3 fats, polyunsaturated fatty acids that you can find in seafood. Now, seafood, like large fish, like salmon, and as an example, actually get their omega-3s from algae. So in fact, it's sort of the plant of the sea that winds up accumulating in the flesh of the fish that we ultimately eat. So again, I guess originally it is a plant-based food, but seafoods like salmon, oily seafoods, salmon, mackerel, sardines, anchovies, they all actually contain healthy fats as well. What's interesting when it comes to metabolism is that omega-3s fire up your metabolism by activating a special kind of fat called brown fat that can burn down harmful white fat. Again, this internal fat that can build inside your body. It's invisible, but it's present and it's highly inflammatory. And so eating healthy fats can help your good fat burn down harmful fats. And it's not just the typical oily fish that you think about. Studies have shown that, in fact, you can actually eat less oily fish like cod in order to be able to also burn fat and have a healthy metabolic effect and make your body more insulin sensitive as well. So, for example, cod will do it. Mussels, which are a shellfish, will also it. Shrimp can also have this effect as well. So it's not just the typical oily fish. If you're saying you're tired of or you don't like salmon, no problem. There are a lot of other foods that I write about in my book, seafoods I write about in my book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, you can choose from.
Wow, wow. Amazing. Thank you for that. That's super interesting. So that was, yeah, so that's week 2. Lots of foods that we can incorporate, especially around the omega-3 that we all need to, gain more of. So we're now going into a very different phase, ovulation. So where we saw the estrogen increasing during the follicular phase, the second half of the follicular phase, now we're going into ovulation where we're actually seeing the estrogen decreasing, and so the insulin sensitivity is also decreasing. And here, it makes sense. We're becoming a little less efficient at burning fat because ultimately this is our body's time to try and create a successful pregnancy. So the body, with the survival mode it wants to preserve the fat and favor carbohydrates as fuel. So during ovulation, I think because the body's favoring carbs for fuel, this is really important to kind of focus on the quality of carbs now that we are consuming during ovulation. So here at Lumen, we promote lots of vegetables, wholesome carbs, healthy carbohydrates, but particularly the slow absorption carbohydrates, the ones that are going to help us regulate the insulin, help us regulate the blood sugar levels, and, prevent the dips and the spikes in our blood sugar levels that, a lot of individuals, a lot of women will, experience in the afternoon. They'll get that dip in energy. And what do we tend to kind of reach for is, the high sugar snacks, which, are going to derail our health journey towards a good, weight management. So with slow absorption carbs during this time of ovulation, what can we incorporate here?
Well, slow absorbing carbs are generally a healthier way to eat at any point in your life, but especially during this phase of the menstrual cycle, as you say. Some of my favorite slow absorbing carbs are the legumes that we talked about earlier: beans, white beans, pinto beans, black beans, lentils, chickpeas. If you take a look at the Mediterranean diet, you'll see many different ways of actually cooking these types of slow absorbing carbs and legumes in absolutely delicious ways. And for people who say, well, I don't know if I can eat beans every day, I encourage people to go onto Google, type beans, whatever bean you can actually find, type Mediterranean and type recipe, and check out videos of people showing you how to make them in absolutely compelling, you can't wait to mouth-watering, can't wait to sit down and eat them way. Grains also, whole grains are actually, and particular types of grains are also healthy and helpful for slow absorption. Barley's a good example. You can make a barley stew or a barley soup. Buckwheat is another example. And then sort of a very unusual type of carb is purple maize, which is purple corn, which actually is indigenous to South and Central America. You can see the purple corn growing in Peru, for example, and you can also make incredibly delicious foods out of these. Again, the emphasis I want to make is that these dietary recommendations that you're hearing us have a conversation about today in regard to the female menstrual cycle are not meant to be rigid dietary approaches, but rather suggestions of ingredients that are absolutely core key players in creating delicious foods that can actually enhance our lives. So eating healthy isn't about deprivation. It's really about leaning into and enjoying our meals.
Yeah, good point. So great. So that was the ovulation covered. Now we're entering week 3, right? And again, totally different week now. We're entering the luteal phase and post-ovulation. This is where we see our hormones really fluctuating, and a lot of women are starting to experience cravings around, week 3. And with the cravings, a little bit more hunger. Also, we've seen the temperature, our body temperature actually increasing a little bit here too. So first recommendation, I think, and I think you'll agree, is stay hydrated. Water is so important, especially if you are, getting in those slow absorption carbs that are high in fiber. We really want to also, increase our water intake. But with the cravings and hunger around week 3, we found with a lot of our luminers, on their Lumen journeys, just hitting the protein intake during the day really helps a lot of individuals, stop that excessive snacking. Because with protein, if there's adequate protein in every meal, you stay full for longer. And we know protein is incredible macro to help us preserve muscle mass, to build muscle. And as we're aging, naturally we're losing our muscle. So we want to do everything we can to keep hold of that muscle, build it, and that's going to obviously boost our metabolism. So with protein in week 3, what sort of healthy protein sources have you found really beneficial?
Well, high protein foods are actually important to eat throughout our lives, whether we're young children, adults, and especially as we get older. Even, post-menopause, high protein foods is really critical for a healthy aging. So think about this as sort of a general go-to throughout your life. And part of it is actually exactly as you said, to build muscle. So here, what I like to do is to see if I can have high protein foods with other benefits as well, which is obviously a theme that you're hearing me talk about. So a great one are tree nuts. Almonds, pistachios, cashews, macadamias, a whole series of nuts, walnuts. They actually not only are high protein foods, you can snack on them, and they contain dietary fiber, which builds our gut health. Building our gut health helps us streamline our metabolism, which gives us more energy, and also helps us heal better as well. So particularly, as we're thinking about recovery of any sort, rebuilding tissue, as we need to do during the menstrual cycle, we want to actually be able to heal and grow blood vessels as quickly as possible. So tree nuts. We talked about some of the other ones as well, like beans and lentils and legumes of all sorts. Chickpeas are also wonderful. Eggs can also be another one. Fish, we talked about seafood. Fish and shellfish are great sources of protein. Quinoa is another good source of protein. Seeds like pumpkin seeds and sesame seeds can have protein. And yogurt. Now, if you're going to have yogurt, which is a good source of protein if you have dairy, it's a fermented food. It's a probiotic food. So that also helps to build gut health. My one little asterisk when it comes to yogurt is to be very careful to kind of go for the pure thing and be cautious of the kinds that you get in a grocery store that have added sugar. That's the kind that has, a layer of jelly at the bottom to make it super sweet. You don't want flavored yogurt. Flavor it yourself. Flavor it yourself with a fruit that you can cut up. That's in season to make it incredibly tasty.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of healthy foods out there, but when you look at the label, you see that hidden sugar there. So that's, and like you mentioned earlier on in the talk, is that, with sugar, it's going to increase our risk of inflammation. It's going to increase, those spikes in our blood sugar levels and our risk of developing prediabetes. So that's a really good point. Just really read the label with some of these foods that we're buying. So going into week 4 now, the second half of the luteal phase, again, totally different week. The hormones are still on their roller coaster ride here. We're seeing during this premenstrual phase, this is can be a tough week for some women. And again, it's super interesting. Every woman's different, right? Some have, horrific symptoms, premenstrual symptoms. Some, not too bad. But, generally speaking, I think week 4, just, before our period starts, we're seeing maybe increased fatigue, and, the low mood. Maybe some of us are a little bit grumpy during this week. But with fatigue, that with the increasing cortisol level, that stress hormone during this week, can really impact not just our physical health, but our mental health as well. So I think this week, it's great to kind of focus on maybe magnesium, right? The magnesium will help promote sleep, will fight this fatigue that we might be experiencing. And a lot of individuals, we don't really know what foods are rich in magnesium. How do we get that? Do we supplement with a pill, or can we actually find this in some foods?
Well, yeah, magnesium is a trace element you find in many plants. Bananas have them. Spinach and beets have a lot of magnesium. Dark chocolate made with a lot of cacao, high percent cacao also have it. So most people don't have a problem reaching for a piece of dark chocolate. I would say the other thing, in addition to magnesium, that'll be helpful to countering hunger is really to stay hydrated. When you drink water, the stretch of your stomach as it's filling up with liquid actually tends to slow down our appetite. And when we are eating, another way to actually counter overeating to protect our metabolism is to eat more slowly and to eat with others as well. So this is sort of a traditional way of eating where you're gathering together and socializing as well. But eat mindfully and eat slowly. When we eat quickly, which happens so often in modern society, you're just taking a meal, you're in a rush, you're just wolfing down your food and not really focusing on your food and off to the races. It's very easy to overeat because you have to eat quickly. The food that you have shoveled into your body beats the signals from our stomach that tell our brain that we should actually slow down and stop. And so, I think some of those other tricks, in addition to magnesium, is to stay hydrated. Water will actually stretch the stomach, slow your hunger down, and eating mindfully and eating more slowly. Those are some useful tips that can help to abate hunger.
Yeah. And going back to the cortisol, the stress hormone that might be increasing a little here during week 4. I think also a good recommendation here is just to also look at going back to what we're drinking. Yes, staying hydrated, maybe minimizing alcohol, too much caffeine, because that's going to be problematic. That's going to sort of increase our cortisol even more. So also looking around, what are we drinking and how that's impacting our stress hormone and our metabolism. But yeah, staying hydrated for sure, regardless, like you said, any time of the menstrual cycle, we should be consuming enough water. It's going to help us stay full and not risk overeating. But the other symptom that I mentioned was low mood, right? And just feeling a little bit sort of, maybe a little bit grumpy. Serotonin, is a neurotransmitter and also acts as a hormone, and it boosts our mood. It's like it's the happy hormone. So there are actually, and I only realized this recently, that there are actually foods that boost our serotonin in our bodies. And I feel like during this week, this would be a great opportunity to actually include these foods in our nutrition, to help alleviate our mood, make us feel a little bit happier. What sort of foods have you researched that actually can boost our serotonin?
Well, serotonin is actually made in the gut mostly, but it acts on the brain. And so this gut-brain connection has been well known to be very, very important. And serotonin is actually made from a precursor chemical. So to get serotonin, you need something called folate. So what are the foods that actually have a lot of the ammunition that your gut needs to create, your body needs to create serotonin? Well, leafy greens are filled with folate. So again, the spinach, the kale, they contain a lot of folate. The same things that pregnant women are told to actually eat as well for development will then be processed by your body to create more serotonin. Again, tree nuts like cashews can also help to boost serotonin, and seafoods can also help as well, or help our body boost more serotonin. Serotonin is not the only neurotransmitter that makes us feel good. It's a very important one. And by the way, this is why people with depression sometimes take these SSRI antidepressant drugs. They actually help to raise the levels of serotonin in our brain, so we have a little bit more of them. So diet's actually an important way to support that. But beyond serotonin, you've got dopamine, oxytocin. These are other happiness hormones. They're mood hormones. And one way that you can actually use diet to elevate those hormones in our brain as well is to actually eat foods with dietary fiber. So dietary fiber feeds our gut microbiome, the 39 trillion healthy gut bacteria that live in our gut. And some of these gut bacteria actually prompt our brain, they text message our brain to release social hormones like oxytocin. One example is actually Lactobacillus reuteri, which is a bacteria, healthy gut bacteria that can be found in yogurt, some forms of yogurt. You can take it as a probiotic. And although I think we have to be careful about some of these foods in terms of how much we eat, many people won't know this, but sourdough bread, which is a carb, actually is made with Lactobacillus reuteri. It's a probiotic bread. The Lactobacillus reuteri actually makes lactic acid, lactobacillus lactic acid. That's what gives sourdough bread its lovely tang to its flavor. Parmesan cheese, the kind from Italy, Parmigiano Reggiano, also the starter bacteria is Lactobacillus reuteri. So in moderation. Be careful of the salt, be careful of the saturated fat, be careful of the carbs, but there's a variety of foods that actually can be probiotic in nature. And then if you want something that sort of can also be calming, but also mood elevating at the same time, you talked about teas. Well, green tea can be calming. You can get low caffeine green tea. Chamomile tea is not even made with tea leaves, it's made with a flower, has been shown to decrease our anxiety by decreasing those excitatory neurotransmitters and therefore allow the calming ones to dominate. And then there's something really interesting. There's a type of digestive tea from southwest China called pu-er tea, P-U''E-R. You can find it online. You can find it at a tea store. It's a smoky fermented tea that's not only a probiotic tea, good for your gut health, better gut, better brain, better mood, but also it actually is also a calming tea that helps you digest your food as well. And of course, when we're not digesting our food well, it makes us cranky because we're not actually feeling as good in our bellies. And so these are just some ways that our food is not strictly medicine, but our food can act as medicine. As when women go through the menstrual cycle, what we want to do is to just be really cognizant of how impactful the daily choices that we make are at different points in our cycle.
Wow. So just going back to what you mentioned around the connection between the brain and our gut health, I feel like this is new research out there. It's only the last few years that we've actually kind of seen how connected the two are. Just overall, you mentioned probiotics, but for anyone sort of listening, what is important? The sort of first two steps that they can take now to improve their gut health. I mean, what are the two biggest impacts or foods that we can incorporate?
Yeah, so I have two steps as a two-step approach to protecting gut health. First of all, gut health, we all know what gut health is, which is that we have good gut health when we're not feeling queasy. You know, that kind of uncomfortable, bloaty, crampy feeling that we all have every now and then throughout our lives? Well, that's actually a signal a red flag from somewhere in our gut that those bacteria are not very happy. The ecosystem of that 39 trillion bacteria are not doing so well. They'll eventually clear themselves up for most people, but some people not. And so there's two rules of thumb of how to get towards better gut health. This is a complicated topic, and as you pointed out, Mia, we're just beginning to do the research on it. But here's what we do know. We know that there's two things you want to do. Number one, cut down or cut out the things that hurt our gut bacteria. Okay, they can poison our gut bacteria. What are some of those things? Well, eating a lot of ultra-processed foods, the foods in boxes that have artificial preservatives, artificial flavoring, artificial coloring. You know, different parts of the world allow different amounts of those to be sold to consumers. But, you know, I think around the world, in general, people eat too many of these ultra-processed, cheapy snack foods. When we feed them, you know, we may not actually, we certainly won't benefit from those artificial preservatives, our human selves. But when they actually tumble down to our gut bacteria, in fact, it poisons the ecosystem. Kind of like you would actually take bleach. If you were to pour bleach onto a coral reef, you'll start killing some of the coral and some of the fish around that area. That's what actually happens to our gut as well. Other things that can actually help to damage our gut microbiome, eating too many foods with added sugars. You know, eating a cake or a sweet every now and then, not a problem. But if you have a habit frequently, every day, eating or drinking a lot of these types of foods, you will also damage your gut microbiome. And not surprisingly, your gut won't feel good later. And if your gut's not good, your inflammation levels rise, your mood changes, your metabolism also changes. So what's a good example? What's perhaps the best example of a added sugar product that people have too much of regularly is soda. Not just regular soda, because a typical regular soda has about 9 teaspoons of sugar, refined sugar in a cup. And but even those with non-nutritive sugars, artificial sweeteners, also can damage the gut. More and more research is showing that those artificial sweeteners like aspartame and saccharin, sucralose, look, they don't get absorbed in our body as carbs, so we're not getting calories, all right? However, what actually happens is that they tumble down, they damage our gut microbiome, they poison our gut microbiome. Since our gut microbiome is responsible for helping to groom our metabolism, ironically, when you damage your gut microbiome, your glucose rises, your fat stores go up, and you actually gain weight. So people who drink a lot of diet sodas actually do gain weight. So again, you want to sort of stay away from that. Now, what should you do? I told you what to cut out. What should you add to your life? Any foods, fruits and vegetables with dietary fiber. Pears, avocado, apples, broccoli, all of these are great examples of fiber-containing tree nuts, fiber-containing foods that actually build up and feed our healthy gut microbiome. Healthy gut, healthy body, healthy brain.
Wow, yeah, that's fantastic. Now, okay, so the gut health, we've done the menstrual cycle. I feel like I would love to know this as well from you. With metabolism, being this engine that drives drives us towards our health goals, whether it's losing weight and just managing our weight, optimizing our fitness, general health and well-being, our mental health, physical health. What top 3 foods have you found that are super at boosting our metabolism, firing up that potential to burn fat?
Well, I'll tell you 3 that I actually enjoy myself. Tomatoes are actually one of them. And tomatoes contain a substance called lycopene. Lycopene does a lot of different things. Lycopene actually improves your circulation. Lycopene protects our stem cells to help us heal from the inside out. But lycopene also triggers a process called thermogenesis, which fires up a kind of fat called brown fat to burn down harmful white fat, which can be the kind of fat trapped inside the tube of our body. And so, and studies have shown that even eating as little as 1 ripe tomato per day over the course of a month can actually cause you to lose harmful body fat and actually improve your glucose sensitivity, insulin sensitivity, and your glucose utilization. So your metabolism can improve even by eating something as small as one tomato. By the way, how much lycopene is in one tomato? The equivalent of having 1 teaspoonful of tomato paste. So think about a dish you might make with tomato paste, or 3/4 of a cup of tomato juice or tomato sauce. So again, lots of different ways. Tomatoes are one of, also vitamin C, as you talked about, which is anti-inflammatory as well. So I love tomatoes, and I think they're so versatile in Mediterranean diets. Another one that I really think is one of my favorites, and we've talked about this already, are beans. I particularly like white beans. White beans are very mild. They can come in different sizes, but you can partner them with herbs and spices and simmer them with either vegetable or chicken stock, or and get this wonderful, coax out these wonderful flavors in them. And you can find this, for example, in the south of France. In Provence, they actually have lots of bean dishes, and also in Spain, and also throughout the Mediterranean. Again, anybody who's curious about how to do this, it's not just baked beans that you might see in your school cafeteria, but in fact there are incredible culinary traditions where beans are sort of the poor man's protein, but absolutely delicious and used to celebrate families eating together. I love beans with a little bit of rosemary and thyme and sage, and cooked with a little bit of red onion. By the way, all these ingredients I just mentioned, which are absolutely delicious, actually all have their own metabolism activating substances as well. Finally, my third one, because you asked for three, is actually tea. I love all kinds of teas. Green tea, matcha. I love matcha. So what's in a tea? Tea contains these polyphenols called catechins. Some people may have heard about one catechin called EGCG. I'm not going to pronounce the scientific name, although I can do it. It's a tongue twister for most people. But EGCG is found in a tea leaf. And when you actually steep your tea bag in hot water to create your tea, the natural polyphenol comes out of the tea leaf. The catechin comes out of the tea leaf into the water, which you then sip and goes right into your body, and it triggers fat burning and elevates your metabolism. Does a lot of other things. Lowers your lipids. It's calming for your central nervous system. So tea is indeed a calming drink. But if you really want more EGCG, it's very simple. Have matcha, because matcha is the entire, which by the way is a kind of tea that you might get in a Japanese restaurant, a sushi restaurant. Okay, matcha is not made with a tea bag dunked into water. It's actually created with a powder, and the powder is actually the entire tea leaf minus the stem ground up into the powder. So you get everything. You get the dietary fiber from the leaf. You get all of the 100% of the polyphenol. So you can have 3 times as much of the polyphenol from matcha than you would get in regular green tea. And if you want even more levels of the polyphenols, the catechins, get organic matcha, because the polyphenols are created as a response to the plant to nibbling of insects naturally in the fields. So when you actually use pesticides in conventionally grown tea fields, there's fewer bugs. Yeah, the plant doesn't have to create as many polyphenols. All right. So, but in an organic setting, the bugs are just part of the environment, very, very natural. It's the harmony of nature, and the tea bush, which is like a small tree, will then really ramp up to create a lot of these catechins. So, but if all you can get is regular tea, green tea, that's one of my favorites. It's really good for you. Oolong tea, the kind you get in a Chinese restaurant, also good. And then going all the way to that smoky, fermented probiotic tea called pu'er. These are all among my favorites. I have them in my home. I will alternate between whatever I feel like sipping on at the time. And by the way, it could be hot if you wish hot tea. Many people like to drink hot tea. I do. But if it's in warm weather, you can have it as cool iced tea. All the research, by the way, that have been done in the lab that show the benefits of tea have been done by first brewing the tea in hot water and then putting it in the refrigerator or the freezer to be able to store it before you do the experiment. So all the studies you see from lab research on the benefits of tea have been done using chilled or cold tea.
Wow. God, this is so fascinating. I wish we could talk more and more on this, but honestly, I recommend everyone buy your book, Eat to Beat Your Diet. And really, it's thank you so much for joining us. I mean, I'm hungry. First of all, I'm hungry now, listening to all this advice, and it's incredible. Like, people look at their plate, they don't realize the properties in these foods are absolutely incredible, and what they can do for our health. It's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee, for joining us on this.
My pleasure. Always great to talk about food as medicine. And you know what? I think one of the things that I want to also mention about Lumen is that as a doctor, as a scientist, we all want to actually think about how to measure the benefits. First measure is actually how we feel. Second measure is how we look and how we can measure ourselves. A tape measure around our waist is good. But I actually think that it's really quite an amazing breakthrough to have a breathalyzer effectively that can actually capture a number throughout the day that reflects how your body has metabolized fat or carbs, and how that cycles and reflects the resiliency that we actually have. And so I do want to actually acknowledge the technology breakthrough, but the practicality of a device like this. The world needs more people being able to actually assess how they're actually doing. And what Lumen has done is created something that is so practical and so useful to be able to guide what we're doing, in addition to the great taste and availability of what we can actually afford and what we can find.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Wow. Yeah, so with your advice and the tips around the food and the ability for an individual to pick up their Lumen device and get that real-time data on what their metabolism is doing, I mean, that combination is a sure way of reaching success on any health journey. But well, thank you so much again. This has been fantastic. And yeah, I recommend your book. It's absolutely fascinating.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.